And as Tim would say if he were here today, hey, everyone, welcome to the Tim and Jim show. Tim is not going to be on the show this month, but will be back next month. But hopefully he's watching. I know he's got some stuff going on. Nothing negative. All good. And but really excited today because we're going to talk about something that has really become near and dear to my heart, and that is why you need an email newsletter for your marketing. And so, really excited because Tim met our guest initially, and now I've got to get to know Bobbie Lee a little bit as well. And so, really excited for this topic because if you're in marketing or if you're just even I don't know personal brand, there's no reason why you shouldn't think about starting a newsletter, right? As much as we want to talk about video and how much that video has risen. Email newsletters are, a great way to get stuff out there. And I think even, and Bobbie will, I know, talk more about this, a way for us to get our message out without maybe feeling like we're being too spammy by constantly emailing people. Because if they subscribe, they're like, hey, I want this info. I want to hear what you've got to say. And so, really excited for us to talk about this topic because there's a lot of things been happening even with these platforms like those of you watching on LinkedIn that allow you to have a newsletter without having to go through a lot of extra pain of building things up. So we're going to get started here, and you may notice I've changed my studio around. I now have stones for use that maybe you remember the bricks, and I've changed some things up. I have some lights. So let me know what you think of the new look, and want to thank the folks at StreamYard for this. We're actually using their new feature, which is individual recording. So when this is over, I'll have an individual video audio file of Bobbie, of myself. We can use it for repurposing. I'm going to share it with Bobbie. He can do whatever he wants with it. So it'll be really neat to see how that all works. So Bobbie, welcome to the show. And why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate the invitation and the nice introduction. So, I am a copywriter. I've been a copywriter for 5 years. So, I started out in the sports and fitness industry, and then I kind of moved into email list management, and I started broadening my horizons and working in every industry. What I do now is I help small businesses leverage their marketing and their content. So, I used to, a few months ago, put out a lot of stuff about writing content on LinkedIn. And then I got busy and I kind of scaled back. And I had quite a few people message me and say that they really missed my content. They were learning a lot and they wondered where it went. And people really struggled with content creation. And I believe that the newsletter is the keystone of content creation. Most people that struggle with it don't have one. So I'm looking forward to talking more about it today.
Well, that sounds really cool, Bobbie. And so let's get started with the questions. And for those of you that are maybe watching live or on replay, thank you for being here. And if you've got questions, please put them in the chat. And so, Bobbie, this is going to be probably what everybody asks you almost on a daily basis. Um, how are email newsletters evolving?
So, email newsletters started out as a tool that small businesses could use to promote their brand awareness. They were something personal. They were something that people really felt like they were part of the brand. They got to know more about the brand and their product and services, and they really took off. And bigger businesses saw them taking off, and they started putting out newsletters too. It got to the point where it is now, where everybody puts out a newsletter. The problem with newsletters from big businesses, and I say this because I'm subscribed to probably at least 100 different newsletters a month, if not more, is you have a lot of different fingers in the pie. And when you have a lot of different fingers writing that newsletter, it takes the personality away from it.
Mm.
And you get more about, this happened in the business and we're promoting this, and it's not personal anymore. So I think as a small business, the newsletter still can be used to promote and leverage brand awareness, what it was intended to do. And I think the more personal the newsletter is, the better chance you have of people reading it, even though there is a lot of newsletters out there today.
Yeah, that's true. I know I subscribe to a bunch, and but it is nice. I even like how, in some aspects, some of the platforms like LinkedIn, I get an email when someone puts a newsletter out, and so I can read it on my email, or I can even go over to LinkedIn, and it's like, I think it's almost like an article there, and so I can comment on it and, engage with people. So I think that's one of the really neat things that's been going on with that. And so we've got a couple people. We got Mickey O'Brien says, Bobbie Lee, people in business need to hear this. So yes, amen to that. And we'll shout it from the rooftops. And I want to say hello to our friend Chris Stone from Cast Ahead. He's watching over on YouTube, and he is the guy that created that amazing intro video. So thank you, Chris, for that. And Chris is also my co-host on Dealcasters over on Amazon. So great to see Chris tuning in today. So Bobbie, let's get to the next question, and that would be, what steps should a business take in creating an email newsletter? You kind of brought up, I think, an important point about like the voice, right? Like if you've got too many, what do they say? Too many chefs spoils the soup, or whatever it is. I guess that could possibly be an issue with an email newsletter as well.
It definitely can be. Whether you're a big business or a small business, there needs to be just one person writing it. Then it's kind of got its own voice, and it really is used to promote your brand. The way that I do mine, and the way I encourage people to do theirs that are really struggling with content, is I have the 3 pillars of my business on the Notes app in my phone. So anything that happens during the day, I'll take 2 or 3 different things that happen during the day, and I'll put them in the notes on my phone for future newsletters. Like, for example, today I had a lady message me on LinkedIn on one of the posts that I posted yesterday, and told me a really sweet story about her grandma, which brought a story back to me about my grandma, and it went right into the Notes app on my phone. Now, when am I going to use that? I don't know, but it's in there for when I do. Then when I write my newsletter, I can go back to my Notes app and I pull from these 3 pillars, which one of the 3 do I want to talk about today? And I write my newsletter. Now, all content that I write, whether it's email, whether it's social media copy, comes off of that newsletter. Like the one that I wrote last week, I wrote 28 different social media posts based just solely off of that newsletter. Wow. So one idea from your 3 pillars of business, and then you can break it down into smaller posts and use it to leverage your content. And, it might take 3 or 4 hours to actually create that email. That's going to be your big bulk. But once you've got it, you can branch off of it, and it's fairly easy to create all the content for social media posts and email marketing and other different things that you might be doing.
So when you're talking about these 3 pillars, what exactly are those pillars?
Should be the 3 things that you want to convey to your audience the most. So for me, I talk about email marketing / newsletters. I talk about small business marketing, and I talk about copywriting. Those are the 3 things that I want to convey about my business to my audience. So those are my 3 pillars. Like, for example, the story about my grandma this morning went under small business marketing because, that's where I can utilize it, because it has a very personal touch, the story does. So if I need a story where I'm talking about small business marketing in a newsletter, it's there, it's available, it's ready to use. So this kind of narrows it down. People that have a hard time trying to decide what to talk about because there's so many things about their business to talk about, narrow it down to 3. What are your 3 most important messages or things that you want to convey to your audience? Put them in a Notes app on your phone, or even use a notebook and just write everything down. Pretty soon you'll have endless ideas for days as far as content creation and newsletters go.
I love how you're kind of really, that I think that's a very important point that people need to, go back, re-listen to what Bobbie just said. 3 areas, right? Because if you get too wide, people don't know what to expect. They may lose interest, but I love how you've got this focus, right? the email marketing, small business marketing, and just really makes people think about, okay, what are the three things that if I could get people to really latch on to, and I think here's the other thing that we forget about, even with things like this show. People are watching, people are reading, and they may not be ready to do business with you yet, but it's that consistency that at some point, out of the blue sometimes, right? It'll be like somebody say, "Hey, Bobbie, I've been reading your newsletter and now I'm ready to work with you because I love your content. I love what you're doing and what your stories resonate with me." The other thing I like that you said too is the stories, because there's been a lot of talk, and we won't go too far down this rabbit hole, about AI and how it's being able to now write things. And I've played a little bit like with this Chat GPT. It's fascinating, but what it's missing, and Julia McCoy talks about this. She's big into content creation and with writing. It doesn't have that human touch. It doesn't have that story. It's not going to talk about Bobbie's grandmother, right? It's not going to talk about what, Bobbie, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this, is what Bobbie does with his nonprofit to help people in the community, right? Those are the things that are going to really resonate with me as a reader. I just don't want to see a bunch of facts. I can just Google that, right? If I want facts, or I guess ask Siri or Alexa or whoever, and they'll tell me my facts. Let's explore that a little bit more, Bobbie. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
When I first started copywriting, I had a really good coach when I first started out, a guy by the name of Joshua Boswell. And when I was first doing my content creation, I asked, how much of what I know should I share? And his answer was everything. And I says, well, if I'm just giving all my stuff away, if I'm giving everything away, won't people just take it and go do it themselves? And he says, no, they won't. He says, people are too busy to do it themselves. So if you tell them, if you share with them everything you know and approach them from a place of where you truly want to help them get better, that's what brings in business. And he was exactly right. I have the same advice for everybody I talk to today. Don't hold anything back. If you have an idea, put it down in your notes. If you approach people as truly wanting to help them, don't give them your product, your service for free. But if you approach them as truly wanting to solve a problem and help them, you'll have an endless stream of clients for days. And that's kind of where our foundation come in. We have a foundation we run. It's called the Comfy Christmas Tree Foundation, where I'm Santa Claus, and all the money that we make, we donate back to families in need. And I'll just touch on it briefly. And Santa Claus, and my wife, Head Elf Annie is her name. We're actually going to be on the Voice Your Vibe show this Saturday. So nice. If you want to see us, come join the show. But it started out 3 years ago. Well, I'll actually go back to 4 years ago. We had a Christmas where times were rough. We were living in our fifth wheel trailer. We had job loss. We didn't know if we were going to be able to provide Christmas for our 6 kids. So wow. We had the town step in. We had a Santa Claus step in. And the only thing they asked was to pay it forward, which really helped us show up with a servant heart. So the next year we're thinking, well, how are we going to pay this forward? And we had a friend reach out, was right when COVID hit, that they were going to the hospitals to see children that couldn't see Santa. And anyways, the Santa got COVID, and they asked if I'd be willing to step in. So I said, yeah, sure. Not a problem. And I fell in love with being Santa Claus. And it's grown into, helping me not only show up with the servant heart for the foundation and for helping other families in need, but in business itself. So if, newsletters are important, content's important. We've given some incredible advice today on how to make content creation a lot easier. But if there's anything you take away from today's episode, it would be that. Show up with a servant heart. Try to actually help people solve their problems, and you'll have business for days.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. And Tim is watching us over on LinkedIn, and he just gave you a bunch of hearts. And so Tim, great to see you watching us today. And we're gonna have Bobbie back next year, and we'll talk about email marketing specifically. And so Tim, you'll have to be here when we do that. So just Just letting you know, because we
For
talked
sure.
beforehand. I was talking with Santa, and Santa and I said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So Bobbie, let's go into the next thing, and that would be, we've kind of got this idea, like, okay, we've got these 3 buckets that we can do our newsletter on. I love how you're using the Notes app. It reminded me of a book I just recently read by I think it's Tiago Forte. It's called Building a Second Brain. And you do all this stuff by, like you said, you put notes down, you just get it out there, right? Whether it's written, using your phone, using your computer, and then you can go back to it. And so that's part of my goal for the rest of this year and next year is I'm going to build a second brain. I don't know where I'm going to keep it yet. I don't know if I'm going to keep it on my desk or, in a jar like Frankenstein or something. But yeah, that because it's hard to remember everything, right? And that's why I think getting into that habit of writing is important. So Bobbie, do you have some tools that you recommend specifically for creating an email newsletter?
There's a lot of different CRMs you can use for email. They're all basically the same. The one I would recommend, it's a newer one that's come out. I use it myself and I've really enjoyed it. It's called GetResponse. It's got everything you need without having a website to actually start an email list, start an email newsletter. So it's got the landing pages you need to hook everything up. Like I said, that's what I use. I don't have an email personally. I've been building one for quite some time now. The reason I haven't launched it yet is I want to show other entrepreneurs how easy it is to actually start your business. All I've got is my LinkedIn profile, my newsletter on LinkedIn because I've got creative mode, and then my email list, which I also send the newsletter out to. That's all I've got. And I run a very profitable business just off of those things. Now, is it a bad thing to scale and have a website and have all the different pieces? No, it's not. It's not a bad thing at all. And as you get bigger, you'll have to scale, but it's very easy to actually get started. So you don't even need the CRM. You can start just on LinkedIn by just switching to creator mode and turning your articles into newsletters. But that's the easiest way. I would highly advise starting an email list because, like we talked about before the show, you own your email list. You don't own your contacts on social media. You don't own anything on any platform. But nobody can take your email list away from you. So you can start on LinkedIn, but you need to slowly start pushing everybody towards an email list where you can keep their contact information and keep messaging them.
And so to that point, like, let's say I've started an email newsletter on LinkedIn, and I know you have, and I'm going to make sure I subscribe to that. Do you then, within the newsletter, do you say, hey, if you'd like to join my list and get other info, kind of put that in the newsletter? Or, because I know when I get these email newsletters, if you want to say from LinkedIn as an example, it's an email from LinkedIn, which is actually a nice thing because when you're first building up that subscription list, I trust LinkedIn. So LinkedIn comes into my inbox and I read it, and then I'm like, oh, this is, Bobbie Lee from the Green Goat copywriter is sending out his newsletter. I'm interested in that. And I don't, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm unsubscribing. If I do that, I'm going to do that on LinkedIn. Any thoughts there?
For me, the same newsletter that I post on LinkedIn, I send to my email list. It's just in newsletter form. I don't necessarily promote the email list in my newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
I'll promote myself as a copywriter. I promote my business. Sometimes I don't promote anything at all other than like, follow, and share if you like this email or if you like this newsletter. The way that I promote my email list on LinkedIn is I share a post a week, sometimes 2, where basically I say, hey, if you've been following me for a while now, if you like my content, then feel free to subscribe to my email list. I have a lead magnet that I created. It's an ebook about email marketing, just gives tips and tricks on how to make your email marketing run smoother and easier. So I use that lead magnet. I give it away to people for free if they subscribe to my email list. So I keep them separate just because, and the only reason I keep them separate, you could do it the other way that you were talking about too. But the reason I do is because I had my newsletter for quite a while on LinkedIn, and I built up a good audience on LinkedIn with that newsletter. So I don't necessarily want to mix the two. Even if people are subscribed to both, they're still going to get both. It's just nature of the beast. But that's the way that I do it. I found it works best for me. You could promote your email list on your newsletter and LinkedIn, and it might work out just fine. But for me, I found that it works best if I keep them separate and use the lead magnet and push my email list in post.
Right. Now in your email newsletter, because I know this is something that's starting to evolve. I mean, in some cases, like you can either embed a video or put a video link. You can, put photos. I mean, do you actually recommend, like when you're doing your newsletter, do you like to break it up maybe with some photos at least, so it like kind of like catches people's attention, as opposed, or is it just like straight text? What's your thoughts there?
For me, it depends on the newsletter. So if I think a photo is really going to enhance what I'm talking about, I'll throw one in. But my advice is to make it about you. If you're a video person, make sure there's a link to a video in every single newsletter you send out. If you're a graphic designer and you work with a lot of photos, make sure you've got photos inside the newsletter. For me, I'm a writer, so mine's mostly about the writing. Now, if I think a photo is going to enhance what I'm talking about and help people with that visual image, then yeah, I'll throw a picture in there. But that would be my advice, is make it about you, make it personalized, and make it about what you do. There's no right or wrong to newsletters, and there's no right or wrong to marketing either. Newsletters and marketing in general are always evolving, always changing. So when someone has a new idea, try it. You've got a 50% chance of being successful with that idea. If not, critique it and try again.
Right. No, that's a great idea, great point. And so yeah, so this has been some really good stuff. So I'm gonna ask this this final question, unless we get some comments here from our audience. And if you're watching on replay, ask questions, because we'll come back and answer them, or we'll get Bobbie to answer them, because he's going to see this stuff too. But should a business consider outsourcing their email newsletter? Because I think, right, sometimes we get busy, we come up with reasons why we can't do something, and but we need to move forward. I mean, I know people, my friend Chris, he hired a virtual assistant this year. He says it's been amazing in helping his business. And so is this something that we should consider as well?
I would say yes and no. So no, we'll start with the no. If you're just starting out and you're fairly confident in writing, and I've met a lot of entrepreneurs on LinkedIn that are confident in writing, then you can more than easily start your own newsletter where it's not going to be any cost to you. Now, as you grow and expand, or maybe you're already a little bit bigger, you're going to have time constraints. I mean, I have a VA myself that does all my back end work. Could I sit down and figure it out if I had a few hours? Yeah, I could, but I'd rather spend my time actually writing, actually working with my clients, actually running my business. So if you struggle with content creation, A, or B, if you're too busy to actually put it out on a consistent basis, then yes, you should definitely consider outsourcing your newsletter. Now, I have several clients, that's all I write for them is the newsletter. And they take what I write and they break it up into their emails, and they break it up into their social media posts themselves. They just need that help actually getting started. So you can do it that way. I have other clients where I do everything for them. I do their email marketing, I do their social media posts, I do the newsletter, I break it all down for them. It's whatever works out best for you and your business. So starting out, it's probably an expense you don't necessarily need. But as you get busier, you're going to need to start outsourcing stuff. That's the difference between successful small businesses and non-successful small businesses, is the ones that learn to outsource when they get busy, they usually get busier, and they usually are more successful than the ones that try to take on everything on themselves.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Scaling is definitely important. I know even like doing remote production, it's like I know other people like Tim that if I needed help doing something for a client, right, I can't always do everything yourself, especially if you've got multiple stages involved, things like that as well. One of the things too, I guess I would ask, because I think this is sometimes what businesses don't understand, this applies with social media marketing as well, is you may be able to do that newsletter for them. And I mean, specifically you, but you still need input from the client, right? It's not like I can just say, hey, Bobbie, I need you to start doing the Tim and Jim show newsletter. but I don't have time to talk to you about it. I mean, that doesn't really work, does it?
No, it doesn't. And usually what I'll do is I'll look at what's been written in the past. I'll interview somebody before I write for them and see kind of where they want to take it, what direction they want to take it. And then I'll do some extensive research on their target audience. And I'll create a kind of a first draft, I like to call it, of an email newsletter, and I'll send it back to them for their approval. Now, a lot of people don't like on the first draft, and they'll make a bunch of edits and a bunch of changes, and I'll critique it until we come up with something that I think will really apply to their audience and something that they enjoy too. And then we'll put it out as a newsletter. Once I get a feel for the first one, it's a lot easier to write the next one and the next one and the next one on down the line because I found your voice. And then it's just a matter of how aggressive do you want to be. So the way I run my own is if I'm busy, I send out an email newsletter a month and I'll have a post a day going out based off of that newsletter. If I get to the point where I need clients, I'll send out an email newsletter a week and I'll break that up into 2 or 3 social media posts a day. So it's just a matter of how much do you want to spend and how aggressive do you want to be with your marketing plan.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I also hadn't thought of that. I love that advice of, if you're busy, you get that one newsletter out, but you're actually taking pieces out of that and creating social media posts. And I'm assuming maybe driving them back to the newsletter?
It just depends on where you want to point them. I mean, you can point them back to the newsletter. You can point them to a call with you. You can point them to your email list. You should only point them one direction. So I like to call each newsletter a campaign. Every campaign I run has the same direction I'm pointing them to. So, whether I'm pointing them to a phone call with me, whether I'm pointing somebody to just follow me on LinkedIn so I can get more followers. And that's something that I would discuss with you before I started writing an email newsletter is, what direction are we going to take them for this particular campaign? Writing the newsletters, breaking them down into social media posts. You can't point people in more than one direction because it just confuses them. Right. So what direction are we going to point them for this particular marketing campaign?
Makes sense. And we got a fresh question from a good friend, Catherine. Do you have any templates you suggest for a starting off point for good email newsletters?
I don't really have any templates that I necessarily use. I know if you use GetResponse, they have tons of templates you can use and kind of craft and make it your own. As far as writing, the style that I like to use is I like to use a strong lead in the beginning to hook people. I like to use a story after the lead. After the story, I'll give people different tips and tricks. Usually 3 is the magical number. If there's 4 or 5, it's okay, of things they can do, and then a call to action at the end. So as far as writing, that's kind of the template that I use. As far as email templates, most of the platforms today have templates you can take and make them your own.
Excellent. Yeah, that's good to know because I know I use ConvertKit and they've recently done some revamping and I think they've come out with some templates as well for emails. Probably have some out there for email newsletters as well. But yeah, no, that's a good question, Catherine. And she likes that 3 is the magic number. I've heard that somewhere before. Was that a show when I was growing up? I don't know. But yeah, this has been great. So Bobbie, we've got your Twitter and your Instagram on here. Where else can people connect with you? And, if they want to maybe think about, maybe they want to work with you specifically on their newsletters, what's the best place to do that at?
Best place is to either email me at greengoatcopy@gmail.com or message me on LinkedIn. So I try to check all my social media platforms, but I'm definitely on LinkedIn a majority of the time. And I can put the link to my URL.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Here in the private chat, maybe you can drop it in.
Share it with everybody. And folks, next week we're going to have mine and Tim's good friend Alan Hennessy, and he's going to be talking about. And Bob, you might want to come watch this. solving the digital marketing jigsaw puzzle, because there are so many things that that are out there that we're not always aware of. And so got that link in there. I know I'm gonna have to probably post it in LinkedIn, because LinkedIn doesn't seem to like to play nice with StreamYard. So stuck that over there as well for folks. And yeah, so this has been really good stuff. So yeah, so Alan is joining us next week, and I guess we're almost we're about a week outside aside from Christmas. So when are you're so when are you gonna be Santa Claus? Is that, I guess that's coming up soon?
That's coming up soon. Big night's coming up soon.
That's right.
Busy
That's
time
right.
of year.
Yep, yep. So hopefully everybody has been nice and not naughty, and so so Santa will be kind to you. And then if you want to learn about e-commerce, I've actually, and I'm going to share this as well. I'll be speaking tomorrow at the Agora Pulse e-commerce summit. I'll be speaking specifically about Amazon Live. So that is free to sign up. And so if you want to come join us, and that's actually going to be on AirMeet. So you actually can network with the speakers and other people. So I put that into the chat as well. So if you're wanting to learn about some of the different things going on in e-commerce, there'll be a lot of agencies there. So Bobbie, you might want to show up, because you might find some folks that could use your help as a copywriter, because I know that is definitely a skill set that is in high demand. So really appreciate it.
I think I probably will. It's all about networking.
Yes. And yeah, so that's from, I believe, 10 to 5 Eastern tomorrow. So they've got the schedule out there on there as well. And so yeah, Bobbie, this has been great. Can't thank you enough for everything, the value you brought to the show today. And so folks, if you got questions for Bobbie, connect with him, subscribe to his newsletter. I'm going to make sure that I'm subscribed to wherever his newsletters are, because I definitely like what he shared with us today. And we'll see you next week on the Tim and Jim Show. Take care, everyone.